Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals.
It's episode 6 of season 6. Sam and I had a recent discussion around protecting servers in Azure and on-premise using Defender for Cloud. We dived into what Defender for Server workload is and how it can protect your servers. Here are a few things we covered. What is the Defender for Server protective workload? What features does it provide? How easy is it to enable? And how much does it cost?
We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to us for you to show your support to the show.
It's a really great episode, so let's dive in.
Hey Alan, how are you this week?
Hey Sam, not doing too bad. How are you?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Anything new in the security space that's exciting this week?
No, I don't think so. It's annoying because I thought I did have something, but as soon as I knew you were going to ask that, something popped up, but I've completely, it's gone again.
I saw quite a lot of noise on social media about device code flow, and some sort of large scale attack utilizing it. So, public service announcement, conditional access, get that blocked.
Yeah, I think there was also an OT provider that got compromised and a load of secrets and stuff came out. I thought a load of routers and all that kind of information got leaked. I thought I seen as well.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that. I did also get linked to something today about like a proof of concept attack using WDAC to block Defender. It required admin in a reboot, so I'm not classifying that as a true thing. So, but there are organisations out there that could be susceptible to that, I assume. So yeah, I don't think I've really seen much in the way of product. I don't think. I tell you what, I did see. I did bookmark on LinkedIn. Is I saw somebody had integrated Security Copilot into their SOAR automation, and I took a screenshot because I wanted to zoom in to the actual picture to see how they had architected the flows to see what they were using, and there were loads of Security Copilot actions in there, and I just thought my first thought was, I wonder how that's going to burn through
the SCUs, yeah.
Your SCUs, yeah. Sorry, I'd completely forgotten the acronym there. But yeah, have you seen much with Security Copilot recently, or any changes? I don't really track it too much because none of our clients really, use it.
I think there's been some new things around Entra, things like that, being more integrated into the built-in sort of scenario,
Okay.
and more connectors, that kind of thing. But yeah, and maybe the model's been upgraded, I think, but yeah, not too much.
Okay.
Just going back to that sort of, there was that breach thing. There was 2.7 billion records leaked from an IoT company.
Ooh.
Doesn't say which one, I don't think, but it's things like non-password protected database, which include Wi-Fi network names, passwords, IPs, device names, numbers, and more, apparently.
Ooh. So was it some sort of IoT management product or something like that?
Yeah, it must have been maybe like a back-end networking side of things, maybe, yeah.
IoT SolarWinds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I remember seeing.
Cool. What are we talking about this week?
Yeah, so we're continuing Defender for Cloud protective workload sort of review. So Defender for Server this time, and again, most people probably know what the Defender for Server kind of gives you, but I think it's worth running through the other bits that people might not know about.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Right. So yeah, what what is Defender for Server in the context of Defender for Cloud?
Yeah, okay, so I mean, it kind of name on the tin kind of thing. Um, but it's as part of the protective workload, it's for your virtual machines, your servers, in Azure as well as on premise. So that's Windows and Linux servers. So kind of as it says, it's there's a couple of SKUs within that that protective workload, and in effect, it's to allow you to. Well, I suppose one part of it is to provide you with Defender for endpoint licensing. So that's Plan 1 from that side. So Plan 1 gives you Defender for endpoint for servers, but in effect is Plan 2 in Defender for endpoint, just to slightly confuse it. So yeah, that's how you license this, in effect, license servers for Defender for endpoint. So that's one of the main things. That's the minimum that it's sort of used for. But then you've got Plan 2. And Plan 2 gives you, that Defender for endpoint sort of SKU, but plus, a load of other parts to it. Really, this is, yeah, what's the way to put this? It's kind of like the other protective workloads. It's to protect that specific service, that server, and try and do it in a smart way. Really, that's probably it done and dusted. Is that this episode done then? It's done. Yeah.
No, but I just want to circle back to the whole MDE versus Defender for Server, or Defender for Endpoint versus Defender for Server. So when you talk about Defender for Server in this context, forget about the Defender for Server Plan 1 and Plan 2. If you license either one of those, you are getting Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 functionality.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Defender for endpoint Plan 2
Okay.
functionality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
So,
that can be
yeah.
confusing. That you envision you need to have Plan 2 in Defender for Cloud to get the full-fledged Defender for endpoint. Because as far as I'm aware, that you can't get a Plan 1 for Defender for Server. As far as I'm aware.
Right.
As in, no, I'm confusing it again. Defender for endpoint Plan 1 for servers, I don't think there is one. I think you can only get Plan 2 in Defender for endpoint.
Okay. Yeah, because and I think it is worth could you just talk to the distinction between Defender for Server and Defender for Endpoints? Because I know that we've bumped into a lot of organizations that do get confused about that workstation licensing comes from your productivity user licenses, let's say, or that the security SKUs of them, but Defender for Server, which is Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, is licensed completely separately. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you said, your user licensing covers your user endpoints, your Windows 10, 11, Mac, Android, iOS, etc. For your licensing for those users when they decide log on. And yeah, as you said, servers aren't covered by that licensing. They are licensed separately, and you can buy with some EA agreements. You can buy the SKU through licensing, but the best, it's fair to say, probably the best way and the easiest way of doing it is through Defender for Cloud, or the standard way now is to do it through Defender for Cloud. And Defender for Endpoint Plan 2, or I think they call it Defender for Endpoint for Servers Plan 2.
Yeah.
Is with any SKU that you get in Defender for Cloud and the protective workload Defender for Server. Super confusing, completely.
But essentially,
so,
but in real simple terms, if you are looking to roll out Defender for Endpoint on your servers, this is the, let's say, most preferred way to do that now. Is that like fair to say, except for some niche, licensing situations? This is going to be the, the
This is the
the most
normal way of
popular way.
doing
The
it.
normal. That's probably the best way of it. This is the normal way. If you're wanting to put that onto your servers, you're looking at these SKUs in Defender for Cloud.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that you only need Plan 1 in Defender for Servers in Defender for Cloud, to get that Plan 2 capability in Defender for Endpoint.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you talk us through the features of Defender for Server? Maybe in addition to that Defender for Endpoint capability.
Yes. So as we said, Defender for Server Plan 1 in Defender for Cloud is only Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. That's all that's in that sort of SKU within that. But within the plan Defender for Server Plan 2, you've got that EDR capability. And then what I'll do is I'll just sort of run down the list and then we'll dive into them a bit more. But you've got then on top of that, you've got agentless scanning, compliance assessments, Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management add-on on top of your Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. So your MDVM add-on. Some free ingestion benefits when ingesting into log analytics. OS configuration assessment. OS update assessment. File integrity monitoring. Just-in-time machine access. And network map. I think actually there is... we can break that down even more into an even larger list, but that's kind of the key sort of high-level side of things, which seems actually quite a lot for the extra on top that you you pay on top of Plan 1. So, and some of this can actually be, could be cost neutral in a way, depending if you're using log analytics and Sentinel from that side of things. But if we start going through some of these, so agentless scanning. So what this is doing is alongside Defender for Endpoint, if you do have that enrolled on the machine, because again, you may have another EDR solution in place, so you may not need that part of it. But in effect, what this is doing is taking snapshots of your disks in Azure, because I think this might be only an Azure thing. I'll double check that in a minute. But in effect, take a snapshot of it and then scan it offline, so it doesn't consume any resources on your endpoint whilst you're doing that scanning. So it does scans for vulnerabilities, software inventory, secrets on the machine, malware scans, and also does a scan on Kubernetes nodes as well. It kind of classes that as well as part of the Defender Server Plan 2. So it can be done. That's that part. And that then feeds into the CSPM side of things as well. So that's pretty good in itself. Again, making sure that you're able to do that without disrupting workloads. Maybe you've got a sensitive workload, but you still want to do vulnerability checks against it.
Sorry. Before you go on, Alan, is that just for just Windows machines? Sorry, did you call that out? Windows servers?
I think it's for both. It doesn't tell me that it's Windows only.
Okay, yeah, because I think you've talked about the criticality of the services that those servers are running, but also we know that organizations are trying to right size their inventories as much as possible to reduce cost or be more frugal. So that is quite a big benefit, because that processing overhead is shifted to one side, isn't it? I assume that's running in, that's running in some compute space that Microsoft manages in Azure alongside
Yeah.
those virtual machines, right?
Yeah, and yes, it is. It isn't for the on-premise servers, because
Yeah.
for the fairness of that, you might not be able to capture that and send it up, and you probably wouldn't want to do that. But it is available for Azure VMs, AWS EC2, and GCP compute instances. So it is in the other clouds as well. So not even just Azure.
Yeah, that's really good. Especially if you're also looking at like smaller instance sizes, like um, you know, I don't know, does Defender for Endpoint really eat up that much resource? It definitely does eat up at least some resource, doesn't it? So, being able to take that risk away is only but positive, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the next one is compliance assessment. So being able to do regulatory checks against your virtual machines. This now does also have an integration with Purview, Compliance Manager. So you can see if you're going to get regulatory compliances in there, you can see your statistics, or your how well you're doing against the controls, technical control side of things within there, as well as in the portal itself. So you can add ISO 27001, NIST, and various versions and things like that. And that does go across Azure, GCP, and AWS.
Nice. Really good.
So yeah, that's just makes it slightly easier. So you can deploy the regulatory compliance policies, can't you? Azure policies, but it might be slightly difficult to read them in the way that maybe you need to against a control. So it's more of a GUI to help you understand all the controls and things like that as well. I think it's a better way of displaying them. So that's relatively simple. Purview, just did Purview. Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management add-on. So with this one, this adds enhanced inventory information into Defender for Endpoint. So this allows you to see. I think I've done something on MDVM previously in the add-on, but in effect, this gives you the additional license that you need, that you normally have to buy as well for your user endpoints, in top of your E5, things like that. But in effect, this allows you to get the browser extensions, certificates on the endpoint, and then vulnerability information around firmwares BIOSes and hardware. So when there may be a vulnerability, an Intel chipset or an AMD, etc., you have to see that as well. And the other part to it is that you can do CIS baselining in Defender for Endpoint, so you can check whether you're meeting a CIS hardening. And when you're doing remediation, if there's an vulnerable application, as part of that remediation, you can check a box, say you can't execute it until it's updated, which I think is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, 100%. I think, just giving the teams as much vulnerability information as possible is no bad thing. Definitely.
Yeah, and one thing we've kind of seen with customers around the certificates, so it's showing you which ones are expired. Maybe you can identify one that is malicious that shouldn't be on there. But we've actually seen customers using it to identify where their wildcard certificate is, on their front ends and things like that, and when they're going to expire. Because sometimes that can be difficult if not tracked properly. Understanding, when that certificate expires, what problems you're going to have.
What are you saying, Alan? Are you saying that people, may deploy certificates and forget about them, and then that might cause issues?
I'm saying it happens. Been there. done
Done
that.
got the t-shirt.
So,
Love it.
so yeah, we've seen customers say, "Oh, that's quite quite good," and also it's understanding where that certificate is and it shouldn't be, as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, yep.
Yes, that's vulnerability management. Again, I think we did an episode maybe some time ago about MDVM and the add-on as well, for a bit of a deeper dive into that. So the next one is a free data ingestion benefit. Now, this always gets confusing, but in effect, into a log analytics workspace. So with some of these features, it's best to sort of store some data in a log analytics so you can do your reporting, or it's how it tracks the changes, things like that. But in effect for this, when you have Plan 2 in Defender for Server, you get 500 megabytes of data ingestion per day per node, aka a server, which is can be quite a bit. And there is certain tables, and I'll go through that in a minute quickly. But that is aggregated on the workspace. So if you've got a server that does, ingests 100 meg of data, and then you've got a server that ingests 800 meg of data, total between those you have 1,000, or I say 1,000, a gigabyte of a day of ingestion for them. So you're still, in effect, that ingestion will be free still. You'll have 100 meg spare. So the more servers you have, the bigger the pool, the more change you can have within that. And this is really good as well if you've got Sentinel, because it reduces the cost of the ingestion there as well. So, like I said before, I think with some sort of, I'm going to say crazy calculations, you can kind of work out that you can actually, it becomes the Plan 2 almost pays for itself if you're doing a lot of ingestion for Sentinel and things like that, because you're saving on the ingestion costs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, so I suppose there may be a justification to say, if we are ingesting that type of data, then yeah, it could be close to cost neutral to go to Plan 2, right?
Yeah, to then have all those other capability. Yeah. So the following security data types that are included in the benefit, or in effect the tables within log analytics, are security alerts, security baseline summary, security detections, security events, which is the important one. That's the one that's probably the most that's being consumed. Windows firewall, protection status, update and update summary, and MDC file integrity monitoring events. So that's the main ones there. But in effect, all you have to do is enable the Defender server on the log analytics workspace for the benefit to then be applied to it. So yeah, it's I think that's a great one, and like I said, you can generally, I think it's a general sort of cost reduction of the service because you're saving elsewhere with it.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one. OS configuration assessment. So again, this is doing a security baseline using Cloud Security Benchmark. So kind of similar to the compliance side of things, but we're just doing recommended configuration on the endpoint. So this will probably tie into Defender for Endpoint as well, but in effect, it's looking for misconfigurations there, and then it in effect gives you remediations, things like that. And this is included on Azure, on-premise, AWS, and GCP. What does it kind of cover? This looks like it is only Windows Server for the security baselines.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just Windows servers from 2008 R2, 2016, 2019, and 2022. It's a bit odd that 2012's not in there when they're doing 2008. Um,
It must do,
yeah.
surely. That must be.
You'd assume so, wouldn't you? Especially if they're doing 2008.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's included in there. The next one I said was file integrity monitoring. So this is, let me just get it. So this is looking at, this is in effect that helps with regulatory compliance for PCI and ISO 17,799.
Okay.
So not your normal 27,001. But in effect, it's looking at analyzing the operating system, Windows registry, application software, and Linux file systems for changes that might indicate an attack. So it's looking at, baselining them, or hashing those files, and then working out if they've changed basically over time, to understand if, like it says, someone's got in and just changed and modified them slightly to then cause a wouldn't be a supply chain attack, but yeah, manipulating the system files to be able to then create an exploit. So I think that's quite important itself. It does need the log analytics sort of configured, which is what I was saying around one of the benefits of the ingestion. In effect, it gives you a recommendation on which one you should monitor. So I think you can actually choose. So for like Linux, it's saying /bin/password/boot, etc. Windows files, they're saying c/config.sys, c windows regedit.exe, and various things like that in there. So they give you a list of what they recommend you should at least start with. Same thing with registry. And then you can decide what you want to sort of track. So I guess if you've got some, I say important software, but some critical software that you want to check doesn't get compromised, you can get it to monitor those systems, and see when it get if it when it gets upgraded, that you're being identified as things being changed.
Yeah, nice. Really good.
Yeah. Next one is OS update assessment. So as part of Defender for Server Plan 2, you're in effect allowed. I say allowed. You don't have to pay for Azure Update Manager and the assessments and things like that. So I think if you don't have this, there is a cost for Azure Update Manager for when you're managing Azure's. I think anything in Azure is free for Azure Update Manager, but when you go to on-prem, I think you have to pay for it. I think that's right. But in effect, this allows you to do to essentially manage it. It in effect remediates system updates and gives you recommendation on patches. And you can do periodic assessments against the machines, so you're always checking to see if it is up to date from a reporting perspective. Which I think again is powerful in itself. That you can almost start managing your Windows updates up into one place, and maybe move away from a WSUS server, things like that, from that side of things. Then the next one is just-in-time machine access. So this is quite powerful in itself. So for some servers, they may have a public endpoint, and maybe you're not using Azure Bastion, and you want to be able to RDP or SSH into that machine directly because it's got a public interface, or even if it's just on a local VNet, and you want to only protect when you can access it on the network. This allows you to, as it says, open up firewall ports to either agreed IP addresses or the IP addresses you're coming from for a period of time. So kind of like the privileged identity management, where you can say I need access, I need a role for 3 hours, 4 hours, etc. You can then open up, firewall rules so that for an X period of time whilst you do maintenance and things like that. So this is great for making sure that machines aren't always open to, even trusted IP addresses, where you don't need to, in case that endpoint gets compromised. as well. So that's definitely powerful, and it's really easy to do. It takes, I'd say, 30 seconds to configure, and 30 seconds to activate, kind of thing as well. Once you've got it connected and it's changing the firewall rules, it probably takes 30 seconds. That is available on Azure, AWS, and AWS. I thought it might have been GCP. No. So it's just Azure and AWS. So you can. So that's quite good as well. It's not just Azure for that one.
Okay, yeah, really nice.
And you now also have the network map, and in effect protecting network. So this used to be its own SKU, if I remember a while ago, sort of network traffic and DNS and stuff like that. But this, in effect, now is doing an analysis of the state of the network security and best practice. So recommending NSG changes, things like that, where a VM is connected. It's also looking at how you're doing firewalls, NSG groups, just-in-time access, inbound, basically checking your rules and things like that there. And it can also then start helping you with mapping out your network. So understanding what topology is, and building up basically a map of that network. So I think that's quite powerful in itself, because Azure can look, or can be difficult when networking is across multiple subscriptions and multiple VNets, when they're all peering and things like that. Especially if you're going for a hub and spoke sort of architecture. So yeah, and I think that's it from a high level.
Nice, yeah, tons of extra functionality, and I think the thing for me is I kind of think of like Defender for Server just being Defender for Endpoint, but it's not. It's a collection of additional services, especially in that P2 variant, right?
Yeah, and like the networking one, I've seen it where Defender for Cloud is alerted on when you've got public IP addresses, open, malicious IPs trying to connect to it, trying to brute force the admin, the administrator account, or the root password, or attempting to do some stuff like that. You see all that as well. So it's definitely doing like a network analysis as well of stuff coming in, where you might not get that.
Yeah, it's not just like CSPM posture management of we see this open port. This is real time network threat detection. Really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, all good. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So how do you deploy Defender for Server?
Well, some would say you just turn it on, slide the bar over, and you're done. So, for Azure, in effect, so it's enabled it for so it's slightly complicated in some way, but the simplest thing is that it's you're able to enable it at the subscription level. So you turn it on for the subscription, and then the services in Azure are then activated, and then in effect protecting, and you're starting to be charged for the servers that are in that subscription. For machines on premise, for Plan 1, so yeah, for Plan 1 stuff, you can do direct onboarding, which means you don't need Azure Arc. That just allows you to basically do Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, and they automatically get onboarded into Defender for Cloud, basically. That's the most simplistic way of doing for the cloud, for the on-prem. But if you do have Plan 2 and you want all these other functionality, all these other features, you have to deploy Azure Arc to the machine, to allow it to then Azure to in effect add all those other features down to the server on premise. That gets them onboarded. Some of the functionality needs configuring, so there is some stuff around the file integrity monitoring. There is some stuff you need to enable there. especially also getting it into the log analytics workspace, so it can store the hashes or the monitoring it's doing. And there is some configuration background around enabling agentless scanning of agentless vulnerability scanning, automatic deployment of Defender for Endpoint across the estate, and things like that. Now, if you don't want to do it for every machine, you want to be targeting. There is a way to target machines using the API. You can't do it in the portal at the moment, I believe. But for Defender for Endpoint Plan, Defender for Server Plan 1, you're able to, in effect, specify which ones you want to include to be enrolled at a resource level. I think, in effect, you tag them, and then there's an Azure. It's either Azure policy, or you have to run an API call, basically say anything tagged, make it so kind of thing. For Plan 2, you can't do it by resource. You have to enable at the subscription level, but you can exclude resources from it. So it's working the other way around. So there is a way to not include resource if you want to. Again, I think you've got to do it via an API or a PowerShell command or a Azure CLI command. But in effect, that's how you then enable it there. And for AWS and GCP, you do have to create the connectors in the environment to those, to every account and workspace. Is it workspace in Azure, in AWS and GCP? I think it is. And then, or account, I think it is actually, isn't it? But anyway, so once that's all connected up, and then there's basically, you can enable the workloads in that connector to say, I want Defender for Server Plan 2 or Plan 1 there. And yeah, that's in effect it starting to sort of build up. There's probably some, statistics and that. But once you've got it enabled, then you'll start getting all your recommendations to start looking at how good or bad your environment is. Could go either way, I guess, sometimes. But yeah.
Nice, yeah. Seems relatively simplistic to set up. How much, big question is how much does it cost, and how is it licensed?
So I think the price has actually gone down a little bit from when I last seen it. I'm not saying it's like massive reductions, but based on UK South, but in dollars, Defender for Server Plan 1 is $4.90.6. So I've always seen it as $5. That's how I've known it to be.
Okay.
For that one. And this is charged, as far as I'm aware, by the hour. As in, not that, the $4.96 is a monthly cost, but it's based on the machine being turned on. So if you've got a machine that goes off and on, during the, on the day, off at the night, or you've got a machine that is for jump boxes, things like that, you're only paying for whilst it's turned on. So that is one benefit of doing it through Defender for Cloud versus buying it through an EA agreement at a license level, because you're paying for it to be on 24/7 at that point. And then for Plan 2, it's $14.60 per month per server for those extra bits. But I'm pretty sure last time I did some calculations of 500 meg of data going into log analytics, I'm sure it was around that price for it. Let's have a look.
Okay, so if you are just looking for straight up EDR and nothing else, you're absolutely fine with Plan 1, aren't you? Because it's Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. And if those other features, so those other features are effectively costing $10 per month, aren't they?
Yep.
On top, right? So, I suppose it's a question of do any of those other features or does that whole collection of features add up to $10 worth of value to you? And there's certainly a lot there, isn't there? And also a lot that maybe organizations aren't doing today. So it does feel, I don't know, relatively reasonable. But I suppose there is also a lot to consume and manage there, isn't there, that you're going to get. So that just needs to be thought about, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, the vulnerability management add-on is a cost as well that you're getting on top of that. And just quickly looking, if you ingested 500 megs of data a day into log analytics, it's $23.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it kind of definitely pays for itself and saves you more.
Yeah. So if you are an organization that does utilize Sentinel and you do have those levels of ingestion, because that is the other part of it, isn't it? Like how noisy like your boxes are, then you should like seriously consider Defender for Server Plan 2, because in theory it could save you money if you were in that scenario.
Yeah, there'd be a tipping point, things like that. It all needs calculating. That's why I said it's a bit of a mad calculation to work out, because you've got to work out how much you're ingesting against how many servers and again the tables that you're ingesting into as well, where it makes sense to. There's only 2 SKUs. That's the cost. I think it's relatively, the if you need Defender for Server, Defender for Endpoint for your servers, then like you said, Plan 1 is like no brainer. You only pay for when the machines are on. I think that's in on-prem as well. I think it seems mad to only pay by the hour sort of thing for it. I suppose you're not getting any data, are you, and things. So
and I think that I think those extra features are just going to be down to whether an organization is ready for that type of like improvement, or that feature set, right? Because some aren't, some should be, but aren't thinking about like just-in-time access to their boxes. And if you compare that to like a Bastion, that's probably cheaper to do Bastion like properly. I don't know, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That you can get a level of like access.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say that actually you could lock down the RDP port to a local network, and even if you got a VPN up to it, you could still block access to that server and do just-in-time access to it that as well. Where Bastion, you could jump onto it, but anyone could jump onto it any time, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
there's different scenarios, I think, where it makes sense to. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's it's like what's the other one that's got loads of functionality in it? Oh, it's Defender CSPM, isn't it? It's got like loads of like just in some respects like random extra functionality, because it's got all the DevOps integration into it now, hasn't it? Right. So like those types of SKUs, if you do hit the sweet spot of like needing that feature set and having the right products enabled and all of that sort of stuff, it can make a lot of sense to you. But if you do just want one element of it, like let's say you're not using Sentinel, but you do want vulnerability management. Let's say you only wanted vulnerability management from that list, then you're going to have to pay $10 a month extra, aren't you? Or could you just license that separately?
Don't know. Sorry, I was searching for something. I didn't quite hear what you were saying.
No, so let's say an organization just wanted vulnerability management add-on, MDVM. Would they have
you
to
can
buy
buy it
P2,
separately.
or you could
I
just
don't know
buy that
about
separately? Yeah,
I think you can. I don't know about server though. That's good point.
Yeah, I was just it doesn't, I suppose it doesn't really matter about that specific scenario, but what I'm saying is that it can hurt people that just want like one or two
part
of
of
those
it, yeah.
features, when like Defender for Endpoint for $5 per month is like a P2 is like relatively good value.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want MDVM, then like I don't know, it could trap people, I suppose. But
Yeah, you kind of have to make sure you're at least using so
a
much of
few
it
of
to
them,
get the
yeah,
value out of it. Yeah,
exactly, yeah, yeah. And like what is it? The network map, which has got real time threat detection.
yeah,
That 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 seems to me like enable it, and it's just a better threat detection. Like I
yeah.
don't
And
see a downside to that really.
no,
You
and
would
to be
just use that
fair,
more.
I use scenario about public access, but that will probably also be internal access if it's seeing something a bit weird as well. I say weird, odd, abnormal on the VNet or
Yeah,
the
well, yeah,
subnet.
but how many people are like ingesting their flow logs into like
Yeah,
a Sentinel and have content around that?
yeah,
Probably not a lot of people, right? So actually, as a point click enable and forget, that you can't really. There's an
yeah.
argument just to
Why,
say how easy that is to
why,
implement. Yeah.
what? Yeah, why ingest the logs when you can get Defender for
Well,
server to
it's
actually do the analysis and give you the actual
exactly.
risk.
Yeah, but again, I was just thinking if in the context of not comparing it to like a seam, but just
Yeah,
people probably don't even have that visibility today. So actually,
no,
and it's kind of like what did I do last week? I did Defender for databases, didn't I? And the
hmm
real time threat detection that a lot of people might not have, like they might have like private SQL servers that they don't really have any sort of threat detection on at all. And that could be the same for these servers. They might not be public servers. They might be servers that are stashed away in like some VNet somewhere that don't see the light of day. But, if there was a threat actor that compromised one of those machines, in that space, then, you'd want as much sort of threat detection as you can in that space to give you information and guidance, especially around instant response and restoration, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It just seems, yeah.
yeah.
But
One thing to also mention as well around the pricing or the licensing of it is that that's the Azure consumption because it's all Azure consumption. But Microsoft also provide a reservation for Defend for Cloud, so you can pay 1 year up front, pre-commit basically, and then you can get from 10 to 22% discount
yeah, so
on
it's
that.
scale. Yeah,
Yeah, depending on
yeah,
how much So the first one's like 5,000 MDC consumer units, so it's in effect $5,000 basically, and you get it for 4,500
yeah,
pound dollars. So if you've got enough servers or you've got enough workloads across all of Defender for Cloud, you can straight away get 10% sort of thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, so yeah, you
Nice,
can make it work that way as well.
excellent. Thanks, Alan. Anything else you wanna cover?
No, I don't think so. Again, you could probably dive into some of those other there's other bits probably for a bit longer. But I think a sort of quick review of them kind of gives a look at it, and it's probably worth just investigating what some of them do and whether it meets some of your sort of requirements.
Yeah, no, definitely. Cool. Right. What's the next episode, Alan?
Yes, the next episode will be February's news.
Ah, yes. Great. I love the news episode. It's good to catch up on just everything that's happened whilst you're head down in work and missing random updates from random places. So I do like those episodes personally.
Yeah, yes, that'll be a good one to do. Cool. So did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. This really helps us reach out to more people like yourselves. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions to episodes, we have a link in our show notes to get in contact with us, or you can leave a comment on one of our episodes on YouTube.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thanks ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep, thanks all.